Single player games are the future, and here today I want to talk about why they are the safest, smartest, and most valuable paths forward for any studio that wants to build something lasting. I'm Vadd, and yes, I get it. Multiplayer was supposed to be the future. Look at the charts, look at the awards, look at the conversations online. The titles that consistently year after year are making the biggest impacts aren't the ones with battle passes. The industry as a whole has spent the better part of a decade predicting the death of single player, but the truth is the exact opposite has been happening year after year. So the question is, why and what did everyone miss? I gotta tell you, I've got the answer and it's shockingly simple. I'll tell you a personal story. Listen, back when tigers used to smoke, I enjoyed a game called Divinity Original Sin. It was a great game. I had a lot of fun. And one day, those developers made Divinity Original Sin 2, and I went and got it. I didn't see marketing for it. I didn't know anyone else that was really playing it at the time. It was genuinely me going, I like Divinity Original Sin. You know what? Let's try Divinity Original Sin 2. You've built trust with me as a consumer. I've had fun in your game. Let's see what the next one is. And I gotta tell you, I had fun in Divinity Original Sin 2. I had maybe even more fun than the first game. What this means is, when those developers went on to make their next big game, without playing the game or knowing anything about it, I bought it. It was an early access. I bought it. I downloaded it. I played the first 45 minutes or so, and I said to myself, you know what? I really think I'll enjoy this game. I'm going to wait until it's out of early access and play it through then, happily. It left early access. I played the game. I loved every second of it. I share this story with you because I don't think I'm alone in that behavior, in finding something I like and then pursuing more of it. The developers built trust with me that they're going to deliver a fun experience I'm going to like, and I continued to pursue that relationship by continuing to buy the next game they sold. I think this interaction represents why I think smart game studios will always focus their talents on the single player experience and continue to win with it. Part of the appeal of a single player game is that it has a clear creative vision. A single player game gives teams developing the game and players playing the game focus. A single player game has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that structure that players engage with is the same exact structure that lets a studio craft something that feels intentional. There's no moving quarterly targets, no shifting goalposts. There's not an endless content treadmill. Instead, you're getting to design moments that land. You're getting to experience characters with actual arcs and emotions. Developers can control the pace, the tone, and the experience. It's the type of storytelling other formats in video games cannot match. And I think when a studio nails that clear creative vision, that great story, the emotional impact lasts for years. Just think about it. A large part of why single player games are year after year so successful is they unlock creative freedom. Developers have the full freedom to craft the narrative, difficulty, and pacing without the multiplayer compromises. And I think this freedom, this flexibility, allows a deeper immersion and a better player experience. When a studio has to bill you to keep their servers running and to balance multiplayer fairness while also patching exploits and enforcing anti-cheat, that environment, the only outcome from that is creative stagnation. And part of why solo games will always be the best experience, the best product, is because it's a low risk, predictable production in comparison to something like live service or some of the multiplayer contenders. As I think predictability is one of the most underrated strengths in game development and in players. As a developer, single player games allow the teams to work with a clear scope and a steady plan. You know the features, you know the world size, you know the narrative beats, you know the production timeline. These all make budgets easier to manage. It makes staffing more stable. It reduces burnout. It really allows developers to plan their careers and their lives outside of the game they're working on. This same predictability in production provides that experience that players resonate with. You have a world of an appropriate size. You have those strong narrative beats. There are features that are fun and engaging and make sense in the world because they're designed around fun, not on friction. Developers aren't trying to cover some never-ending content pipeline because a single-player game is a project with a defined finish line. Just like the player, we want to play something that has a strong finish that we can resonate with. The developers want to finish their project too. I think this predictability, this stability means the teams can put more of their energy into the quality inside the scope of the project. I think players see that in the end result. I also think one of the reasons only smart studios focus on a great single player game is because they are long-term assets. Once they launch the game, something interesting happens. It can keep selling for years. How often do you see a headline, this game sold this many copies? I gotta tell you, they didn't sell that many copies the first hour, the first day, the first week. That's a long tail of lasting value. And these games show up in seasonal sales. They get rediscovered when a sequel is announced. And frankly, these games benefit from word of mouth, the YouTube videos that myself and loads of other people make, the various social media presences that are picking these games up after the fact. All of these things help to stretch out a long tail and really make this a long-term valuable asset. Think about yourself as a player, right? You have absolutely picked up a game that was on a seasonal sale and probably found the new favorite game to work into your favorite shuffle. You have absolutely rediscovered a game when a sequel was announced. You didn't even know that the studio had made a prior game. I think people like buying complete experiences, and a game with a strong story does not expire. It doesn't lose purpose over time. Instead, a single-player game has an opportunity to become part of the studio's library, something that continues to bring in new players without constant updates. And this long tail is just incredibly valuable. It's why some titles to this day are relevant decades later. Something I've been saying here, but I want to be more clear with, is that single-player games have an opportunity to build goodwill and trust. And that might be the biggest of all the advantages. I shared my personal story earlier. I enjoyed Divinity Original Sin 1. I picked up the second one. I picked up the third one because there was goodwill and trust. And you know what? On some level, there's a level of honesty that when a game shows up as a single-player game, you know what it is, you know what it's trying to do. And that honesty translates to loyalty in day one purchases. It translates to trust. It translates to purchases that will keep this studio alive. Every time a new game studio releases a polished, well-done single-player experience, they're adding a track record that helps all their future games succeed, even if they're different. Once upon a time, I played a game called Bastion. It was a really just charming experience. And years later, that same studio produced another game that I picked up well after it came out, and I was surprised at how similar and yet entirely different they were. There were certain things in the movement and the combat that totally felt like Bastion to me again, but the world and the adventure and the way we engaged with it felt wholly unique in their next title. Even though they were different games, the studio had built trust with me in Bastion. They had built goodwill with me that I was going to have a good experience in their next game, and I did. To be clear here, trust is a long-term business asset, and single-player games build trust. I think something small here that as players we don't always recognize, but developers will, is that single-player games give a chance to actually grow. Because every project has a defined end, those studios can look back and learn from it. I don't know for certain, I don't have any insider knowledge, but I definitely feel without Bastion, those future projects wouldn't be as good as they were. I absolutely believe there were systems they improved on, there were pipelines refined, and there were creative risks that were taken in future projects because of that initial game. I think there is creative growth across projects with single-player games where each game becomes a foundation for the next, and that momentum will continue to compound across a studio's entire life. It's not something we see with multiplayer games. It's not something we see with live service games. It's not something we see with MMOs. And I think there's a human side to this, kind of a little secret here, right? Is that healthier teams make better games. Again, in single player games, the development tends to have a more consistent workload with fewer emergency patches. I think there's less constant pressure, which creates more reasonable hours. And I think these keep developers long-term. I think it's keeping developers long-term engaged, challenged, and pushing creativity. I think healthier teams make better games, and better games build successful studios. And I think single player games, by nature of having a defined scope and a finish line, really create an opportunity to have a team of developers who is engaged, challenged, and creatively pursuing a long-term project in a meaningful way. I think also worth mentioning here is that single-player games are some of the strongest IP, that intellectual property in gaming. Think about the most memorable characters. Think about the richest worlds you've experienced. Think about the stories you want to revisit. These are all from single-player games. They're not multiplayer games. They're not games as a service. And I think those strong world-building foundations are the types of things that grow into sequels, spin-offs, books, animations, merchandise, future games. A great single-player story is the seed that will grow not just an entire franchise, but an entire world around it. Listen, single-player games offer clarity, stability, trust, and long-term value. These are things that developers need and things that we as players need as well. A single-player game lets studios build worlds that matter. They also allow studios to create lasting careers, not just quick hits. And I think they form the backbone of why so many franchises are the powerhouses that we still talk about today. If more studios focused on strong, complete experiences, great storytelling, I think we end up with a healthier industry and better games because of it. I've got one favor to ask of you is to leave a comment with what single-player experience meant the most to you and why. I'm Vadd, and thank you for watching. If you like this video, click like. YouTube channel members and the Patreon to support what I do. I will see you in the next one.